Let's talk about Jim Ross is now on the second Ross. Jim Ross is now on the second. They're on the second Jim Ross. They got rid of the first one, put in a phony. He's on the second hour of Dynamite, and now he's hosting Rampage. There's speculation. Is JR getting too grumpy sitting through 2 hours of bad wrestling so that by the end of it, he's just like, oh, get me out of here. They put him on Rampage because the ratings of Rampage, the show that they have not given a shit about in months, has reached an all-time low over the past couple of weeks, down to 300-something thousand people. Is that possibly a ploy to get JR back on or get him on that show to get some of the viewers back? But
no.
Otherwise, they had Taz, Tony, and Excrement start the program, and I'd love to hear more Taz anytime. But as we saw pretty much at the Forbidden Door, no matter if they got Howard Cosell, if they got John Madden, if they got pick your era of great sportscaster, as long as Sockface is still sitting there, it's the shits. Can we all agree on that?
In terms of the commentary, I've been saying for a while that it's a problem, and it's all three. And there's a lot of people who want to ignore that it's all three. There are a lot of people who all of a sudden like that Tony Schiavone's the modern David Crockett. I think it's terrible. But there are people who, for some reason, like it. I think he's used perfectly as the interviewer, as long as you can tell him not to act like an idiot, which seems to be a problem.
Tony he'll see this bullshit that if he'd have seen this working for Crockett Promotions, it would have been followed by a bunch of the boys hitting the ring to beat up whoever was doing the fake phony shit. And Tony just laughs at it. Oh, that's great.
And that's what he does. And that's why he's terrible on commentary. Jim Ross is miserable on commentary. And if he's not miserable, he sounds miserable, which is just about the same thing when it comes to a commentary. And I think if the idea, because they did it on the pay-per-view, and then on Dynamite, he came out for the second hour, which ended up being the main event, the entire second hour. The idea of bringing out Jim Ross for either just the second hour or just the main event may be the single best way to use him. He'll get a pop every time you hit that music and the fans get to cheer for him because he's a legend. And he's going to be out there not long enough to get tired of everything and everyone. Because it's clear that him and Excalibur don't necessarily see eye to eye on things. And he's made shots on commentary. Again, I forget who it was. Someone debuted. It's one of my favorite moments ever. And Excalibur's like, oh my God, look who it is. He's amazing. He's in Japan. And Schiavone's, oh my God, it's amazing. This is great. Jim Ross like, who the hell is that? And that's what the commentary is. Taz is fantastic on commentary. And he brings out the best, I think, in both Excalibur in a funny way, and even in Jim Ross. And I thought Kevin Kelly really classed up the place, but it's probably too much to ask that Kevin Kelly leave New Japan and get hired full-time to be an AEW lead commentator. But I think there's a problem in commentary, and it's been there for a while. I think for some people, it's a barrier of entry, and I know other people don't want to hear that. But I think Schiavone and Jim Ross and Excalibur don't work as a trio. I don't think there's any reason why it needs to be three people in the booth. It should be Taz and a second person if you're going to use Taz in that role. And if it's going to be Excalibur, I'd rather it not be, but they love Excalibur. And he's the Young Bucks guy, so as long as the Bucks are there, Excalibur is going to be completely protected.
Yeah, we know that we're stuck with the guy. He's the shits. But you made Taz with Kevin Kelly. Then you've got basically Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg. You've got an ex-jock that's well-spoken and has some back, even though Rogan was a stand-up comic, he's trained and he's the manly man, but you've got somebody that can provide some analysis, and you have the straight man announcer that can sell the product. But you've got the fucking idiot outlaw goof with a sock on his face, Tony, he's wearing an earring. He's my age. He's older than me. And he's trying to laugh at all these joking kids, and it just comes off stupid. But I agree, if they just an experienced ex-jock, ex-wrestler, color guy that's well-spoken, and a straight play-by-play announcer that can be your salesman that's not a gimmick. That's what you need on a wrestling show. And they've got 15 announcers, and they shuffle them around in all kinds of combinations, and they don't get to the root of the problem. It's either most of their announcers are either too amateur or too old. That's it. Anyway,